Finally, we have Tari Nangura from Black Lives Matter Toronto.
Hi, my name is Tari Nangura. I want to do a land acknowledgement first. I want to acknowledge that we are on Indigenous land and we're here today because it was colonized and continues to be colonized. Okay, so Black Lives Matter. The city's response to carding has been disingenuous from the start. The process was not well thought out or accessible to those mostly affected by carding. It was clear they were trying to avoid Toronto because they don't want to face the people directly affected. This is cowardly and a poor way to represent the needs of the public. We deserve to be heard, and we are tired of people making the decisions, running away from their responsibility in this manner, while black people stay being dehumanized in all different ways. It is this type of political culture that is complicit in anti-blackness and leads to both a loss of dignity at least and loss of life at worst. Yassir Nagvi and Kathleen Wynne have said they would not eliminate carding, saying it's important that police are able to investigate any activity with clear and effective rules in place. This is not good enough. We are calling for complete and total eradication of carding. Our lack of participation in this process is because we don't believe in the process itself. It started as an online consultation. Only after backlash was it made more localized. And this shows that this was not done with the interests of Black people at heart. A total and complete eradication of carding is what we are calling for. Nagvi and Wynne want to eliminate. We want to regulate, and we are calling for elimination. That is all we are demanding.
Thank you. We'll now take questions from the press.
Do you have faith that your message today and any message that you bring to the consultation later today will have any effect on what the province decides to do? I know you've been not just saying it today, but you've been saying it for years, not just months, but years and years and years. Do you have faith that today will bring a change?
Absolutely. We as organizations wouldn't come together this morning if we didn't believe that we had the power to affect change. We have a commitment to our communities to do our utmost, to do whatever we can to engage in these public consultations to the interests of the community. And so yes, we've come together to crystallize our message, to say, you've heard the voices of community, you will hear more voices tonight, but ultimately when it comes down to it, our legal position is that it's fundamentally illegal, it's a violation of human rights, and it needs to go. And we believe that by continuing to work together and pushing a united message, that will be heard.
What do you plan on doing if, by any chance, if tonight and beyond tonight, the province decides to continue with the regulation rather than the elimination? Any changes versus what you've been doing so far?
There are those in the community that feel that it's a dog and pony show that's going on with the province. That they felt that some in the community have chosen not to participate in it whatsoever. Obviously, we don't feel the same way, but with that said, I think that we have to use all means that are necessary. I think, Black Lives Matter is here, and you saw what happened, and it was, it seemed like it wasn't until then that the media and everyone paid attention that this must end today. I'm a school teacher in the Toronto District School Board. We're getting ready to welcome back children. Every year I have grade 8 boys coming up to me telling me, Mr. Barif, why did the police just stop me when I was walking home after school? And many teachers in the school system will tell you the very same stories that their students are telling them. It's wrong, it has to stop, and it has to stop today.
Any other questions?
Why did you feel the need to do a press conference this morning if you will be at the consultation tonight?
Est-ce que vous voulez une réponse en français?
Oui, s'il vous plaît.
OK. Mais on a décidé que c'est important de passer nos messages parce que on a beaucoup de membres dans la communauté qui peuvent articuler leur position, mais ce n'est pas souvent une position légale. Ce matin, nous sommes le clinique juridique des Afro-Canadiens qui a organisé les autres organisations pour avancer notre message que c'est une pratique qui est raciste, illégale. C'est basé sur la charte des droits de la personne et liberté. Et c'est pour ça qu'on a décidé d'organiser ça aujourd'hui. Parce qu'il y a plein de voix, mais nous, comme représentants de la communauté, on a décidé de cristalliser les voix de la communauté.
Qu'est-ce que vous craignez?
Qu'est-ce que je craignais? Qu'est-ce que vous voulez dire?
De quoi vous avez peur à la fin de ces procédures-là? Qu'est-ce que vous voulez vous tenter d'éviter?
D'éviter? une dilution de la voix de la communauté pour dire que il y a trop de voix, alors ils vont prendre les partis les opinions de la communauté qu'ils veulent déjà avancer, qui est plutôt sur la côté des policiers et les institutions qui veulent continuer la pratique de carding et street checks.
Can you summarize for us what she said in the second part of the question in English?
So the question is what do we fear will happen by not making this statement, right? Essentially. So ultimately, what we have come together to do is make sure that we don't find ourselves in a position where the government says, well, we've heard plenty of voices, we've heard a broad cross-section, and they end up having, while it's important to have public consultation, they end up cherry-picking pieces of the community's voices, as opposed to taking word from our legal position that we've taken and that's been supported by these other organizations. While we support public consultations as part of our democratic system, we don't want to be in a position where the government says, oh, we've heard so many voices, and then they use that as a ruse to go and make regulations that are more consistent with what police services and carding apologists would like to see.
Can I add something?
Sure.
And I just want to add really clearly that even though many of us will participate in the consultations, that we must understand that it's deeply troubling and problematic to have a consultation around people's rights. We would not tolerate that for any other group. So this speaks quite deeply to the long history of anti-Black racism in this province and across North America.
I would like to make one other statement. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms states that legal rights is that everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of the persons and the right not to be deprived thereof, except in accordance to the principles of fundamental justice. So everyone has the right to be secure against unreasonable search or seizure. Everyone has the right not to be arbitrarily detained and imprisoned. These are our rights and freedoms. Everyone has the right to arrest or detention, to be informed promptly and of reason therefore, to retain and instruct counsel without delay. These are the things that are happening when people are being stopped on the roads just randomly without any cause. And it's also, any person charged with an offense has the right to be informed without unreasonable delay of the specific offense, to be tried within a reasonable time. So we are accountable under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Can I just ask, I know that some groups were approached by the province to have specific meetings with Minister McPhee and with the Ministry of Community Safety. Were any of your groups approached to have like a one-on-one meeting?
Well, the African Canadian Legal Clinic was part of one of those meetings, but we understand there are multiple meetings that took place.
Yeah, the Urban Alliance was also invited. We also found out that BADC, or the Black Action Defense Committee, wasn't invited, and we found that was quite troubling, given the history that that organization has had in building, trying to, in this subject area. So, kind of back to what Dr. Walcott said, it's like, and also with Anthony said, we don't want the province picking and choosing who they're thinking they're hearing. This is a united voice throughout our community, organizations that represent a broad, many of the community members, and we're saying that this must end today.
And can you describe, those of you that had meetings, what was the nature of the meetings? How receptive were they to your suggestion that there should be an elimination, not regulation?
Well, there are a number of other, in the consultation that the African Canadian Legal Clinic participated in, there are a number of other legal organizations. They're pretty united in saying that legally it has no basis. The reception from the government, as often is the case with these things, they heard us, but I will say, and I can't speak for those other organizations, from the perspective of the African Canadian Legal Clinic, there is from our position a discomfort on their interest in maintaining this illegal and racist practice in some very limited form, but still a form no less. And I'd like to say, ultimately, when you look at speaking more generally to this process of consultation, whether or not individuals find themselves at the table in those rooms for those consultations or decide to protest in other ways and not participate, the message is the same. This practice needs to go. How we decide to go about seeing the elimination of the practices is the only difference. And so I wanted to be clear on that. Our message is that this practice absolutely has to go. And if we're talking about regulations, we're talking about regulating the elimination of this practice, not regulating the practice itself.
Do you mind expanding on that? What do you mean by discomfort?
What I mean by discomfort is, while we would articulate legal positions that have been researched, generated from our own expertise and experience on these questions, there would still be questions that we would go through that are outlined in the consultation, which already presume the continuation of street checks and carding. And so our position was, well, we can't even have a conversation about these questions because they already legitimate the process. So if we start giving you answers to them in the way in which they're articulated to us, it suggests that you're already leaning towards having this practice. And that actually is already evidenced in the consultation document that was released to the community, where the practice of street checks and carding is noted as an investigative tool, is seen as necessary for public safety, and ultimately giving the impression that the government wants to see it in place. But as has been noted by our organization and countless other organizations, not just representatives of the Black community, there is absolutely no data to substantiate that carding is effective in solving crime. But we would also go further at the African Canadian Legal Clinic and say, even if you find instances where, and we've heard 1 in a million cases that have been noted, Cecilia Zhang, and also Colonel, Colonel Saunders? Russell Williams. Colonel Russell Williams. These are being cited as examples of where carding and street checks are effective. But that's absolutely ridiculous, because what we're talking about are non-criminal interactions. For those interactions with Cecilia Zhang and Russell Williams, you already had cases being investigated. But what we're talking about when we talk about street checks and carding is individuals just going about their day, not having criminal encounters.
Is the feeling here that the province has already made up their mind and these consultations are just looking for validation?
I would say that that's a large part of that, the feeling of why we've come together and decided to assert our voices in this way.
Do you think some of those people who have lived experience will be invited to be part of this consultation, or people who have experience being arrested and hardened and detained, or that? Are they going to be there? Is that kind of thing you think?
Well, we at the African Canadian Legal Clinic have encouraged community members who have that lived experience to be part of the consultation process, so the decision makers have an intimate understanding of what's at stake here. But we always leave it to community to make its own decision and recognize the agency within our community and diversity of perspectives and approaches to this issue. But again, ultimately what we found from the folks who decide to go and voice their opinion, or the individuals who decide that it's not worth subjecting themselves to that, is that they still want to see the practice end. Any other questions?
This morning there's this press conference, and what else is planned for today? So
we had this press conference this morning to articulate our position. Later in the evening at 5 o'clock, there was also a silent protest that will be happening at Yonge and Bloor. That's 5 o'clock, and that's just before the province's final consultation, as far as we know, for Toronto, which is going to be happening at the Toronto Public Library at 6 o'clock. And so we encourage folks who do feel that it's important to participate to do so, or find other ways to articulate their message on